Hello and welcome to Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast where we talk about all of the things that I love, some of the things that I hate, and this wacky adventure that we call life. My name is Bob, I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here today for a retirement discussion with Dane Newlove, Something Neat with Matt, and Driving in the Rain. Let's get started. Welcome back to today's episode. Lots of really cool things happening today. One piece of fan mail that we had says this: how come you never answer the Star Wars questions for yourself? Great question. If you go all the way back to episode 4, back when we were still using old recording equipment, probably have to wade through some pretty bad sound editing. I did actually answer essentially all of these questions. Why do I ask these questions? Every guest gets the same set of questions, level 1 questions. Some of them have moved on to level 2. I got this idea way back in the day. There was this program on TV. It was called The Actors Studio with James Lipton, I think. And he would interview these musicians and actors and whoever, and he always, at the end of the interview, asked them the same set of questions. And they were really deep questions, like, if you could talk to yourself from 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? Those deep sort of things. They always got the same set of questions. So I thought that was really cool. So I decided to put sort of a Symbols and Cynicism twist on it. And that's why we always do that same set of Star Wars questions. So, but here's my answers. I would consider myself an 8, 7, 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not sure who Luke's father is, and 10 is you know about Luke's clone. True, I'm a 10 because I know about Luke's clone, but the spirit of it is that a 10 knows all of the incredibly deep stuff. I've got a lot of gaps. I can't name you every ship in all of the fleets, and I don't know the names of all of the class of ships. I don't know all of the planets. That I know the main big stuff. Trivia-wise, I'm not super strong. Storyline, meaning, purpose, I'm all over it. Yeah, I've read the books. Yes, I've seen every movie and every TV show, but when it comes to all the little minute trivia stuff, I'm not there, so I got to dial it back to probably an 8, maybe a 7, I don't know, somewhere in there. Favorite movie? Clearly Empire Strikes Back. Favorite Jedi is really tough. I go with Ahsoka, usually. Kanan Jarrus, up there. Yoda, gotta be up near the top. And Ahsoka's a bit of a controversial pick because she's not really a Jedi anymore. She leaves the Order. She even says in canon, I'm not a Jedi. So, but I lump her in there as a Jedi class of people. Favorite villain depends on non-Force or Force user. Non-Force user, Thrawn, no question. Force user, Maul, also no question. Least favorite character has to be Jar Jar Binks. Favorite scene? That's really hard. I probably have to go like top 10 scenes at least. But it's hard not to say Vader in the hall at the end of Rogue One. However, if you've heard Matt and I talk about bourbon, we say that like a lot of times true bourbon drinkers don't have a favorite bourbon. They have a favorite bourbon currently. And I'd probably say that about that scene. Depends on what I'm watching. A lot of times I think whatever scene I'm watching is my favorite scene. So thanks for your question. If you want to go real in-depth discussion on that, go all the way back to episode 4. That was called Use the Force. No, really, use it. And you can find out all of those answers. Quick reminder, tell your friends about our podcast here. Share us on Facebook. More listeners are more fun. If you want to financially support us, you can use the support the show link in the show description or buy some merch from the merch store at themarchingarts.com/RHS. All proceeds go directly to benefit this podcast. You can also support us by liking and subscribing on YouTube at Robert H. Sloan RHS Music, including old podcast episodes, shorts, and Star Wars episodes playlists. There is some RHS Music composition stuff. You can parse that out if you don't want it. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast. And also RHS Music has a Facebook called RHS Music. On today's show, Dane Newlove is with us for a retirement discussion about his journey into retirement. Hopefully, we're helping all those people who are at this time of year getting close to that mark in their careers. We also have something neat with Matt and a special edition of our homework for the week with a special guest. So stay tuned for that. And driving in the rain. Let's roll. Bring in Dane Newlove. All right, good afternoon. Welcome back. Dane Newlove. Returning to the podcast. Welcome back.
Hi, friend. How are you?
How have you been doing?
I've been doing great. My hair's been on fire, keeping busy, but I love it.
Good for you. Well, anybody who's listened to the podcast a couple times knows you've been on a couple times, and you are a retired band director, retired from St. Mary's City Schools. It's over here in West Central Ohio, where we have been good friends for almost 30 years-ish.
Yes.
Tell us, when did you retire from St. Mary's?
I retired at the end of the 2012-2013 school year. And I don't know that I was really ready to retire, but that was the period of time that STRS was starting movement as far as the number of years, and decided at 30 years it was probably, time to get out, because at that point, I think it was 35 or 34, and it was like, I'm not sure I want to do that. So,
well, you were also experiencing a lot of back problems and some just health issues that go along with being a band director for 30. Yeah. So you did how many? 30?
I did 30 years.
Straight on 30.
Straight on 30.
Okay.
Right.
And that was about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we are, we're here to talk today about retirement and what that was like at that moment, if you can remember and think back that long.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can. This time of year, it's April, it's May, people are headed into retirement at this point of the year, and I'm sure there's a lot of emotions that go along with that. So I want to get into a little bit of that and how you dealt with it, and then maybe you're helping some other people along the way.
Sure.
What do you remember from that you decided pretty early in the year that you were retiring, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So what do you remember about that last year of teaching?
I actually knew during the fall, because I can remember the last home football game and, thinking, this is it. Because we, at that point, we were not a good football team. We used to be, and then, things go in cycles, and thinking, this is the last time that, I'm going to be in marching band. And that was okay. I didn't necessarily mind that, not being out in the weather and stuff on Friday nights and riding buses and things like that. So I knew early on, and as I recall, going to STRS, sometime in the fall, and then our financial advisor, and, seeing if it was feasible to do that. And, everybody, it was okay, to do that. So it was fall. Interestingly enough, I actually got outed by my principal with who told the entire staff that I was retiring before I was ready to do that. There was going to be an in-service or something dealing with something for the next school year, and he puts on this email. It's like, well, Dane, you don't need to come to this since you're retiring. And I have people, running down to the band room and all that. And it's like, oh, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. So,
did the kids know already?
The kids did not know. No.
So you got really outed.
Oh, we got really outed.
Okay.
And in December, that was our last trip. We went to Disney and did the Citrus Bowl Parade in Orlando, and told some of the chaperones at that point, and booster officers, this was going to happen. But then, after the first of the year, I think it was February, sort of this happened and became official at the board meeting. And
right.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about April, May of that year. You're having, your last concert, your last graduation, the last of all the lasts, but also trying to set up for, I mean, band continues, you retire, it doesn't retire.
Yeah.
So trying to set up the next year's calendar, recruiting classes, setting up marching band things. What were the emotions you're going through at that time?
Goodness gracious. Yeah, I did not handle that real well. I distinctly remember my last day at school, which was the last day of May, because you're not allowed to teach into the next month at that point, sitting out in the parking lot and literally sobbing in my car.
Yeah.
That, this is it, and what am I going to do next, I mean, I really didn't know what was in front of me. And, and all the lasts, the last concert, which, you were so gracious to, say a couple of things about me. I don't know if I did I write those or did you write those?
I definitely wrote them. I don't think we would call it a roast.
No, but
we had some laughs.
We did. And that's the way I wanted it. It was not a eulogy, certainly, and I appreciated that. Just all of the last, the last district contest, the last state contest, and concerts and this and that, and it's quite an emotional time.
What sort of support systems did you go through during that time? Or who would you have in place? Obviously, your wife and your family.
Yeah. Well, wife and family, and all my friends. Certainly, you were a big part of that. I remember the following school year, the first day of school for St. Mary's. My daughter, who's a general music teacher at Crestview over by Van Wert, she said, "Hey, let's go to Columbus today." So we went to Columbus, and and she said, "Yeah, I don't want you to be around here the first day of school," which was great, and certainly the thing to do.
Yeah, you mentioned sitting in the parking lot on that last day of May, but when did it really hit you? Because you probably wouldn't have gone officially to school that next week potentially anyway, right? Because it's summer. Now there's inventory and things to do as a band director. But when did it really hit you that, like, I'm not the band director here anymore?
Yeah, there's for all of us, I think there's this small stretch of time in the summer that maybe we can get away from stuff.
Right.
Now you mentioned you wouldn't necessarily have gone to school. Yeah, I would have went to school.
Right.
Definitely. Because there's always something to do.
Sure.
And whether we think what we think might be mundane and not important, but there's always stuff.
Right.
So right. I think that's when it hit. Like that little stretch of time in the summer, knowing, gosh, I don't have to go back.
Right.
I don't get to go back.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Did you make any plans in June, just like special plans in June or July during that couple week stretch?
As I recall, I think we actually were able to get away, a little bit, my wife and I, in that summer, which it was difficult to do, when you're a band director, certainly,
right?
Because there's always things going on.
But you could actually turn off your email.
Yes.
And not have to worry about turning it back on and your phone melting.
Yes, absolutely.
That always frustrated me. Like, sure, I'll turn off my email for the week, but I spent the whole week grinding on what emails are probably coming in anyway. Yeah. It really wasn't the break it should have been.
I never had that ability to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have.
Sure.
But I couldn't,
Right.
You know what I mean? So
theoretically had it.
yes. Right.
Yeah. So in the summer, I think one of the hardest times would be like band camp. Mm-hmm. That was probably a difficult time. Mm-hmm. What did you do to distract you? Did you have like particular specific things that's like, I'm going to do this so that I'm not thinking about that?
At that point, no, not really. Now, my successor was gracious enough to say, you are welcome here at any point, and I tried to stay away, especially early on.
Sure.
In his tenure, tried to do that, and and that became a little easier to go in when you're not the person in charge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but you got to allow some distance there.
Sure.
For the kids to realize the new
And it
new
wouldn't
figure.
be fair to, to the person that follows someone that was in a position for 27 years.
Sure.
To do that. We did start the first alumni band that next fall. So that was, something that I did. I think with all of us that we retire, and I'm using air quotes right now, it's not necessarily retirement, it's just a new chapter in the book.
Right.
So I remember our friend Dan Ruckman from Coldwater saying, "Hey, why don't you come over and just help with fifth grade stuff? Would you do that?" And it's like, yeah, I can do that. So went over in the fall, and I will always remember this, walking in the band room, and I look back in the percussion section, and there's a snare drum stand there that says St. Mary's Bands, and it's like, what is this? And he's like, "Oh, yeah." He said, we picked this up at large group contest, and I meant to get this back to you. And it's like, well, thanks, Dan.
Probably from 3 years earlier.
Yeah, probably.
If we know Dan like we do.
So and then now 13 years later, I'm still going to Coldwater, at least on some smaller basis, doing stuff with the bands and all of that.
And you've stayed living in this community.
Yeah.
Partially, especially early on, your wife was still teaching and working, so you couldn't move away.
No.
Did it ever occur to you to move away? A lot of people retire and move, Arizona, Florida, somewhere.
No, absolutely not. Karen taught for 10 years after I retired. It's just been the last 3 years that we've both been retired. No, we've never really given that much thought about moving away from St. Mary's. This is our home. We enjoy it here. Of course, now I'm doing a community band here also, and would miss that. I think if we would move at all, it would still be in Ohio, but maybe a little closer to our oldest daughter, who lives just across the border in Indiana.
And we've joked over the years that you failed retirement.
Yeah.
If there was a passing fail grade, you definitely failed retirement.
Yeah, I failed.
You mentioned the community band. You mentioned working with Coldwater, but I mean, that's one of many districts that you've worked with, either extremely part-time or a little more regularly.
Yeah.
You also are a full-time staff member with OMEA at the state level.
Right.
So why not just sit on your couch, read a book, watch TV? Why did you stay so involved in so many things?
I'm not wired that way. My brain doesn't work that way. I would bet that most band directors are that same way. Like it's hard for me just to totally turn the volume dial all the way down. I'm always thinking about the next thing, And like you said, I'm in a variety of things. I'm a community band and an OMEA job, and next year will be year 40 with Lima Symphony, and I've got stuff going on there, and it's.
But it's all things that you could say no to at any time.
Right.
And it's things that you wanted to do. It was choose your own adventure, not here are the 1,000 things.
Right. Especially this time of year, I go around and listen to a lot of bands in the area, high school and middle school bands, when they're prepping for large group, contests. I mean, I think I'm up to 15 different groups that I've heard, both high school and middle school. And I had mentors my whole way through my career, even to the very end, And I want to be that person if a young teacher or a more experienced teacher asks me something, I want to be that guy.
Sure.
So,
what's the hardest part about retirement?
I would say remembering that your whole worth wasn't just because of your job, I mean, when I retired, it's like, gosh, is anybody, going to remember me and know who or what,
Right.
Remember the things that, we were able to do here. And that's so inconsequential, it really is. I think it's more important now looking back, to be a better person and, husband and father and grandfather. Of course, we've got grandkids in the mix now and,
And grand dog.
And grand dog, absolutely. Who's the most spoiled of the bunch, but
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
What do you miss most about teaching?
Oh, the interaction with kids, and I still do, I have a private studio, which is another thing also.
Right.
And, just really enjoy that interaction with students, and I don't miss a lot of the hours. I don't miss school drama, and let's be honest, there's drama.
Oh, sure. I've got a top 5 things I don't miss.
Yeah.
As I've gone around and worked with bands, and I'm sure you're this way too, I found myself a couple of weeks ago telling one of my inside jokes that the band kids always got.
Yeah.
And I realized, wait, nobody gets that because I don't really know these kids.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me like,
Right.
what are you talking about? I was like,
Right.
oh, wait a second.
Right.
These aren't my kids.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because it is nice to go in and work with kids, but you're
Yeah.
not building that relationship because you're
No.
in once or maybe twice
Yeah.
and then gone.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It has its benefits too.
Yeah.
Because you're not thinking about the whole rehearsal on the way home because
Yeah.
it's over and you go away.
Yeah.
What's the best part of retirement?
For me, it's just been the variety of things that I'm able to do now that I'm currently involved with, because I wasn't able to be a private teacher when I was band director. I did, but it was maybe 1 or 2 kids, and I've got 7 kids now in my studio, and and that's I really enjoy that. I enjoy going around and helping people and see what's happening as far as music education and all of that. I would not have had. We all did things like that when we were currently teaching, but certainly not to the level that I'm able to do.
You could do 1 or 2, and it had to be at night.
Yeah.
Because you can't take a half a day off of school to go rehearse somebody's band at 10 o'clock in the morning.
No, right.
Now, schedule it, go do it.
Right. And you just said, like with the interaction with the kids, and there are some schools that I work with on a more regular basis,
Right.
and so you do develop those relationships, and that's neat. Like to go to solo and ensemble contests, and I see kids from these other schools that I work with, and hey, Mr. Newlove, it's sort of a cool place in life to be at.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for somebody who's retiring here in the next month or so? What is Dane Newlove's to-do suggestion list for those people?
Well, I think I have a couple of things. As I said earlier, we knew it was going to be okay financially to do that. I think it's important to have a good financial advisor. I couldn't tell you if my life depended on it where our money is invested, things like that, but I know it's safe, and we do have, we are fine financially with all of that. That was a big relief knowing that I could do this, and give up that salary and still be solvent and not living in a box by the river,
Right.
Right.
Well, and afford health care. I mean, that's huge,
yes.
right? You had a little bit of an easy on-ramp there because Karen was still teaching, so there wasn't the health care or health insurance issues.
Correct.
Which hopefully people have already figured out.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. And I'll add on to that a little bit. I just turned 65, and Medicare is really good. It's really good. So that's another sort of sigh of relief there.
Right.
The biggest advice I could give someone retiring is it's not your circus and not your monkeys anymore.
Yep.
And just try to stay away from that and give the next person a fair shot at doing that.
Yeah.
I did that. I would never speak ill of anything that's going on. Entire school, not just the band program. I think that's really important. Because I know that doesn't always happen every place.
Sure. Sure. Well, not everybody leaves under circumstances as you. You left with a glorious final concert. You and your co-teacher Becky retired at the same time.
Yes.
You got scholarships named after you in the band program.
Yeah.
That's still going on?
The scholarship, no. There's an award, the Becky and Dane Award, or I don't even know what they call it. That's still going. But the scholarship is
the Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah, right.
Award for band excellence or
You're
something.
right.
So I mean, you left on those terms. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
27 years. I mean, it's not everybody that reaches that, that
Yeah,
goal.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Well, thanks for spending time with us today. We are going to skip the Star Wars.
Thank you.
Today, probably some of our listeners are upset because you had some great answers
Uh-huh.
last time, but I didn't want to stress you out in your retirement with the level 2 questions. I don't think ChatGPT could handle that level of questioning.
we've had spectrum issues, so the internet's been a little shaky. So thank you for.
Well, the internet's still new here in St. Mary's, Ohio. So.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending time with us
Sure,
today,
yes,
and
sure.
good luck with the rest of your retirement.
Yeah. Till next time we find something that maybe snare drum stick recommendations.
Well, we would probably do more interviews if when I texted you to ask you for an interview, you would actually respond to me, not a month and a half later with
5 weeks. Yeah.
Didn't I send that back? Oh,
Yeah,
I
back
think I thought I typed it and
back in
sent
February. Yeah. Okay.
But
yeah.
This is what retirement is.
It is.
It's forgetting
yes,
to answer emails and texts from your friends.
I think the very first thing was my hair's been on fire. Yeah, I've been a little busy. So
You've been a little busy. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
In your day. Thanks for spending time with us.
And it's nap time now. So
it is nap time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get out of your hair. I've got a rehearsal to go to.
Yeah.
And you've got a nap to take.
Yeah.
So all the best. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Bob.
Welcome to Something Neat with Matt. Happy birthday, Matt.
Well, thank you.
And more importantly, or at least, excuse me, it's not more important. It is more pertinent. Happy Derby Day.
Yes.
It is the week of the Kentucky Derby.
It is.
My favorite day in all of horse racing. The only day I care about.
The only day you care about it.
I watch horse racing.
Did you know that they race horses other than on this particular day?
I've heard rumors.
Okay.
I love the Kentucky Derby. I love the pageantry, the hats, the whole thing. I watch a bunch of the races on Derby Day, and that is the only day that I care about horse racing, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do love Derby Day. And in honor, it should not be called Something Neat with Matt today, because we're not drinking anything neat.
I don't know if you can hear the ice
Yeah,
swishing around.
we have some ice. We're drinking, I don't know if this is the official drink of the Kentucky Derby, but we are drinking mint juleps.
It is actually the official drink.
And we'll talk a little bit about the bourbon that we have in here, but the next couple of episodes that we do, we're doing bourbon cocktails. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of really great ones out there. My favorite is the old fashioned. We'll get to that. But today, because in honor of Derby Day, it's the mint julep. Tell us a little bit about the mint juleps.
From what I understand in doing some of the research, the mint julep is sort of an augmentation of the original julep. The word julep itself is actually, it's derived from the Spanish language. And it means sugar water, is basically what it was. So it started out as a Middle Eastern drink that was served to princesses and those of quote-unquote higher power.
Are you calling me a princess?
Not yet.
Not
We'll get there.
Fair
We're not all the way down the line in history. So then, as settlers started to move into the United States, they sort of started to take on different variations of a julep. In the Middle Eastern, they would use rose petals, sugar, and water. Mm-hmm. That was the julep. And so, in the United States, when they started using this drink, of course, they initially started out using gin and rum. And then as bourbon started to kind of come into popularity, they would use bourbon as part of their mint juleps. And there's obviously a lot of different ways that people have explained how history has started. But they say that the mint julep itself was popular around horse farms because horse farmers, no, not farmers, you don't farm horses.
Ranchers?
Sure. Anyways, workers at horse
Gotcha.
facilities would take mint and bourbon and sugar and mix it all together. They would use the bourbon to take care of any aches and pains because they didn't have Tylenol.
Sure.
But then they would use the sugar for long-lasting energy, but then they would put mint into it because the mint is really what wakes you up initially in the morning.
Oh, yeah, it has kind of that kick and that freshening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also would freshen your breath, maybe,
Yeah,
instead of...
I mean, I've never smelled an
brushing your
1800s person's breath, but
Probably
I would
don't-
imagine that
Probably
anything would
don't
help.
want to.
Yeah, I don't think Colgate was around then.
It's funny, gin is related there. A lot of bourbon distillers are also, especially early in their process, new ones are also gin distillers because you don't need to age it. So you can, where if you start a bourbon distillery, you can't really sell anything for 6 years, but you can make gin in a matter of days and then have product on the shelf right now while you're waiting for your bourbon to. So there is a relationship already between gin and bourbon. So that's how it sort of became a Kentucky Derby drink, was through the ranchers and the horse workers and so forth.
Yeah, and one of the other ways that it really gained its popularity is at the time he did this, he was a senator, Henry Clay. I think he was a senator for Kentucky around 1850-ish. He was a Secretary of State under James Monroe, and so he introduced the mint julep in bars around Washington D.C. when he would do his residency in Washington D.C. So that gained its popularity, and then over time it became the thing, and so now it is the official drink. I think it started in 1938 is when it officially became the drink of the Kentucky Derby.
All right. So today, fast forward, what is E&A mint julep today? What are we drinking in our glass this afternoon?
So typically the way it's made is through a process called muddling. So you take the mint leaves and the sugar. You can either use the simple syrup or raw sugar, put it in the bottom of the glass, and then there's a specific muddling tool that you can take and sort of push it around in the bottom of the glass. And that lets all of the oils from the mint leaves kind of express themselves into the sugar. And then after that, you put in crushed ice, and then you pour your bourbon in. And you can pick whatever bourbon you want. Today, we just so happen to use the 150th edition of Kentucky Derby Woodford Reserve Special bottle.
Because Woodford Reserve is the official bourbon of the Kentucky Derby.
That's right.
These are delightful.
Yeah,
they're refreshing. They are, I mean, you taste the bourbon coming through. It has the sweet edge of the syrup. It's got the refreshing mint flavor. This is a great summer cocktail.
Yes.
I think.
Yes, it's very good. Typically, they're served in some sort of stainless steel or patinaed glass. You typically see these in a steel glass.
Right.
That's more owing tribute back to the early 1800s when that was the only kind of dishware that they would have.
Right.
And then they would use the crushed ice as well. Because the crushed ice, believe it or not, back then, ice was not, you couldn't go up to your refrigerator and click crushed ice and get crushed ice.
Right.
So
I couldn't today either. We were out.
Well, so in the 1800s, crushed ice was sort of a status symbol. If you had crushed ice in your drink, that meant that you were important. So
Once the ice maker does its business, I can have status again also.
yes.
You love the Kentucky Derby. I do. What do you kind of got me hooked years ago, actually. What do you love about just the Derby itself?
I think it's just the fact that for one day, it feels like there are so many people that are seemingly not connected, come connected for that one, 2.5 minute race.
Yeah.
Which actually, to me, the interesting part that I didn't learn until, several years ago, the Kentucky Derby itself is race 10?
Yeah, it's way
10
in there.
or 10 or 11
they do a
of
bunch.
15 races.
Yeah.
And one time I was down there taking the tour, and somebody had asked the question, why is it that it's not the last race, but it's in the middle? And the tour guide said, well, early on, when they started having the Kentucky Derby, they realized that was the crown jewel of the day.
Sure.
And so everybody would they would ingest a lot of mint juleps.
Get
and so
happy.
then they would get to that point, they would win a lot of money in that race, and then not make some sane decisions and go blow it on the next 3 races. So that's why they moved the Kentucky Derby to, towards the end, so that they could start making more money off of those later races.
Win your money back.
Yeah.
Got it. That's great trivia. I love watching the whole lead up to all the smaller races and the ones they do on the turf. And it's just a great day to watch with the women with their giant hats and the men in the linen suits and all the colors and the pageantry of the whole event is just really great. And you took the tour of the whole facility several years ago.
Part of it was still under construction, so we didn't get to see all of it. But it's a pretty fascinating location. And really the whole month of May. Like let's not just highlight the Kentucky Derby, because you also then have the Indianapolis 500 on Memorial Day weekend. So for me, the whole month of May is a racer's dream. Not that I'm an actual racer or do anything like that, but anybody that's into racing and prestige and history, the month of May is pretty significant. Now, the difference between the Indy 500 and the Kentucky Derby is that, the Kentucky Derby, you have nice dresses and all of the men are in suits and ties and fedoras and drinking fine mint juleps.
Right.
At the Indy 500, you're lucky if the men are wearing shirts and there's just buckets of Fireball. So maybe if we do an Indy 500 episode, we'll just have a bucket of Fireball.
A bucket of Fireball, like a cooler of PBR.
Yeah, that's right.
Some crackles of Bud Lights.
The only tradition that I have with the Indy 500 for me is it's a 200 lap race, 500 miles. Lap 100 is when I have one beer.
Okay.
That's my Indy 500 tradition.
That's it.
Mostly because if you're there and it's hot, you get dehydrated and sick.
Sure, yeah, that's always, The weather for the Kentucky Derby usually a little more spring-like rather than the beating sun of Indianapolis in.
But there's something about going back to the hotel room and not being able to take a hot shower and washing sunscreen off of you and little rubber pellets from the tires.
Yeah.
It's the American dream, baby.
That is not this American dream.
Someday I'm going to get you to the Indy 500.
Okay.
Someday we're going.
You keep trying. You've been a number of times. You've ever been to the Derby? You've never been to
I've never been. I can't afford to.
No, I mean,
as long as I'm making an EMA director salary, I will never.
I don't even know what is a ticket. Do you even know? Like the cheapest ticket?
I'm going to guess, but I think the last time I really looked, it was like $800 a ticket.
Yeah, so you guessed 800. We've just looked it up. Fast forward, cut that out. Infield tickets are $833, $862.
You're kidding me. I was that close.
But I don't know that you can see a whole lot. Of course, the Indy 500, like you pay all the money to not see most of the race. It's like the worst view in all of sports. But if you want grandstand seats, looks to me like the cheapest ticket is $908. Down, you'd see the first or second turn, all the way up to looks like 3,200 right at the finish line. If you want to sit at the finish line, 3,200-ish. Tickets here in the Mansion for $20,925. Should I get us?
I mean, if we have a couple more listens on the podcast, we should be able to do that.
Us and the ladies. Let's get 4.
Yeah,
we'll all go.
4. Yeah.
And Harrison might want to go. Let's get 5.
Did you know that there's a jail in the infield?
Really?
Yes. So back in the day, they had issues with a bunch of inebriated crime.
Sure.
But there was no way to get them across the track.
Oh, sure.
Because there's no. Well, I don't know if there is now. At the time, there was no tunnel under the track.
Right.
And so you had no way to get anybody on the infield out. So they built a jail so that they could incarcerate people.
There you go. That's your Kentucky Derby day. That's coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
Are you watching? Just home or other plans? Or
no, I'm watching.
You had a Derby party a couple years back.
I
did. A couple in a row.
Yeah. I think this year it'll just be me.
Just you sitting at home, chilling.
Yeah. Indy will be there.
Drinking some mint juleps.
She'll sleep through it.
Indy is the dog.
Yeah.
In case anybody wonders.
Yes. Yeah. She will not be drinking mint juleps.
This is a great cocktail.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't make a lot of these. I think I had one at your Derby party once 2 years ago.
However, I will note, I did grow the fresh mint for that.
You did.
I did.
We don't have fresh mint today, but it would be better probably with fresh mint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think the kind of bourbon would change it much?
I would be interested to try it with a rye. Mm-hmm. Since it's so, to me, it's a really sweet cocktail. So if you do just a simple rye, bullet rye or something like that. Woodford has a rye, just to see if it kind of cuts through it a little bit. But yeah, I think it's good.
I like it. Well, good. Happy Derby Day this weekend. You got any horses that you're going to place money on?
12. Whoever number 12 is.
Whoever number 12 is.
We're going with 12.
I love one of my favorite things about Derby Day is the names of the horses. You can never duplicate a name, right? The names are all registered with whoever. And also I learned this, I think they probably talk about this every year if you watch the Derby, the jockeys' jerseys, color and design are never duplicated. That's also registered. You're not allowed to duplicate.
Interesting.
Every jockey has to have their own design.
Could you imagine if they do that with marching band uniforms?
I wish they would.
Yeah, there are some that need that.
Yeah, just repetition.
Policy.
Too many that look the same.
Yeah.
You know, and some others that I wish would look more like some others. So good. So, all right, happy Derby Day, and we'll see you another time for the next cocktail.
No, breathe. Find your happy place.
Driving in the rain. It's frustrating, right? You've got people who don't turn on their headlights. You've got people who drive too slow. You've got semis who drive really slow and in the fast lane. It's raining sideways and now you can't see. You've got people who decide that 2 drops of rain mean they need to drive 15 miles under the speed limit. Meanwhile, you've got people who decide that it's in a torrential sideways rain. They should be driving 100 miles an hour. Look, driving in the rain all driving does require caution. But like anything else, too much caution is actually just as dangerous as no caution at all. Be aware. I feel better. You feel better? I feel better. All right, homework for the week. We're doing something a little different for homework for the next 6 weeks. We have Dawn with us. Hi, Dawn.
Hi.
And we're coming into summer. Lots of people like to do summer beach reads or summer reading, especially teachers. You kind of get a little more of a break. I wouldn't say whole summer off. I would never say such a thing, but you get a little more of a break, a little bit of time off, and like to ramp up our reading. So we are going to do 5 weeks worth of books that we have read that we suggest for summer reading, and then 1 week of books that we plan to read this summer. And I've limited you to 5 because you will probably read 7,000 books this summer. So you've got your list ready. Why don't you go first? These are books we have read that are beach reads, summer reads, something light and fun.
Okay. So when I was looking at lists, Bob's list, of course, was categorized. So I decided to go categorized as well, just to kind of line them up. So this week's beach reads, I guess, probably no one else would call them beach reads, but sort of lighter, inspiring summer reads. I'm going to go with Running with Sherman by McDougall, which is just a great book. Even if you're not a runner, I'm not a runner. I live with runners. But Sherman's a donkey. He's a rescue donkey, and it's fantastic. It's just different and light and really inspiring. And then my second one for this kind of category is going to be The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. And this one, I think, is technically a beach read, vacation read, could be a coffee table book. Like, you don't have to pick this one up and read it cover to cover. You can just kind of skim around, read 1 or 2 little chunks at a time, and then leave it and come back to it later. And just, again, different than any other book I've ever read, and just quirky and cool.
Yeah, Anthropocene is great. It's a series of essays
Right.
where John Green reviews different facets of the human-centered planet. And some of them are super serious, like orbital cellulitis and diseases, and then also like Dr. Pepper or the Canadian goose, etc. So yeah, they are fantastic. There's also a podcast by the same name, Anthropocene Reviewed, where he then expanded it into a book. So the book is a little longer, contains most of them. Running with Sherman, awesome. Rescue donkey. Then he starts to race with the donkey. They run a marathon tied together. There's this whole thing, like, this is what people do. They tie themselves to donkeys and they race marathons in the mountains. It's
with axes and picks.
Yeah, it's crazy. That was also on my list. That's by Christopher McDougall. So I had that one on my list too. And you cheated off of my list on that one. And then my second one is also a Christopher McDougall book. It was written 10 years earlier than Running with Sherman, 2009. It's called Born to Run. And it is about, these are both true stories They are nonfiction books where he actually got the rescue donkey, tied himself, and then ran a marathon. It's not a made-up story, and neither is Born to Run. He was struggling with his own running and some injuries with his feet at this point in time, and he started to investigate this tribe in South America that is known for running hundreds of miles barefoot. And they have these incredible races that are impossible to get into. And so this is his journey, trying to learn how to be a runner again and fix his feet. And he was originally a journalist with like Running Magazine or some runner's magazine. And then he started writing these novels. So that is our suggestions for this week. Born to Run and Running with Sherman, both by Christopher McDougall, and Anthropocene, reviewed by John Green. Got your list for next week?
Ready to go.
All right, we'll be back next week with 2 more.
Okay, that's the show. Make sure you leave a rating, drop a comment, or send a message on the app of your choice. You can text the show with a link at the bottom of the description, or check out the merch store at themarchingarts.com/RHS, or our YouTube channel at Robert H. Sloan RHS Music. We hope you'll join us next week for our Star Wars Force Spectacular and downloads. Thanks for joining me today. The theme music is Superfly, written by me, copyright RHS Music. The show logo is designed by John Suh, and the show is produced by my sister, Kathy. I hope you'll join us next time for more reflections and rantings on symbols and cynicism.